You're listening to episode 299 of the Master Your Mind, Business, and Life podcast. It's the last episode of our 2022 Energy Forecast series, and we're wrapping up this yearly series with a return guest, Felicia Bender. Dr. Felicia Bender is best known as the Practical Numerologist, and Felicia is devoted to helping you uncover your life's purpose with numerology. Felicia has joined me on episodes 30, 79, 125, 183, and 257. I think she reigns as the only guest who's made an appearance this many times. But I love the way that Felicia breaks down numerology. But in addition to that, talking to Felicia feels like talking to an old friend. Each time she joins me for a conversation, I feel the authenticity shine. This week's episode is brought to you by Spiritually Seeking. When you visit spiritually-seeking.com, you can save 20% on items such as card readings, life guidance sessions, and numerology reports when you enter the promo code podcast at checkout. That's right. All you've got to do is go to spiritually-seeking.com and enter the promo code podcast at checkout to save 20%. Okay, are you ready to dive in and see what 2022 has in store for us in terms of numerology? You know what to do. Tune in, turn it up, let's go.
You're listening to Master Your Mind, Business and Life. Conversations with everyday world shifters, truth seekers, and rule breakers. Here's your host, Lauren Smith.
One of my favorite guests is back. Felicia, welcome to the show. It's always such a joy to have you join me.
Oh, it is such a joy to be back. And I felt like a poltergeist right then. I don't know if anyone remembers that old movie, Poltergeist, but
yes.
They say they're back.
They're back. Okay, well, no going through like television screens or anything today.
No, thank you very much. But,
we're not going to put the TV outside today. But the last time that we spoke was for the mid-year 2021 Numerology Energy Update. And while we're here to get an outlook as to what's to come for 2022, let's just recap on 2021, which was a universal 5-year. You had said that the energy of the 5 is all about freedom, but also that the 5 is a roller coaster year and that the 5 is a catalyst. So let's just kind of recap. How have we seen the energy of the 5 play out so far in 2021 from a global or collective standpoint?
Yes, and that is a great emphasis point to start out with. But for those of you who are listening and you're like, what does a universal year mean anyway? And what is numerology, right? So a universal year, just very quickly, numerologically, it is an energy signified by the year. It's a theme, basically, and we can feel it, actually. So that's the fun thing about being able to talk about it and put it into perspective. And yet, what it is, it's the overarching energy that all of us feel universally or globally, like everyone on the planet. And then we'll talk a little bit later about the personal year. I just want to, differentiate the two. The personal year is what you feel individually. So it's more of this immediate energy is the personal year, but the universal year is like that umbrella. And you just take the year itself. So for this would be 2021, 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 1, and that equals 5. Just so everyone knows, oh, okay, that's why it's a 5. That's what we're talking about. So the 5, as you say, that we're eking out of right now has been about freedom. It is midpoint of this cycle of time of the universal year cycles. It's a 9-year cycle, goes from 1 to 9 and then back again. So we're at that midpoint, and it really is a change. It is change. Just plain and simple. And then with that emphasis point on freedom, and now we have to thin slice that. In what ways do we collectively feel free? How do we define our freedoms? What do our freedoms mean to us? How do we create more of it? How do we use it wisely and well? What is it on every strata of freedom? Physical freedom, emotional freedom, health, spirituality, all those levels. So it's not just the simple freedom, freedom's just, I want to go do what I want, however I want, whenever I want, right? It's really, how do we develop that? And I think we can really see a point of emphasis this year in that, because we haven't been able to be free in terms of movement, of travel, and that has been global and with different severities, right? In different parts of the globe. I have friends and colleagues and clients in different parts of the world, and it's very interesting to see how different countries, right?
Yeah, even in
are
different parts of the United States are
Yes.
vastly different. Yeah.
Vastly different with a core element. And yet, so I believe that this 5 energy has really been stirring the pot. And what the core there for me also, numerologically speaking, is that we're always going to be feeling a little bit of an opposition. Well, maybe not even a little. Let's just put it this way: a lot of an oppositional pull, right, of the theme. So each number in numerology has an energetic presence. It brings with it a certain energy and certain thematics. And so when we talk about that, we're talking about the optimal, but we're always going to be dealing with the opposition, which in this case is what's freedom, it's restriction, containment, feeling tethered, feeling smothered, feeling, like we don't have sovereignty over our lives, over our bodies, over ourselves, over anything. Right. And so I think that has been a real key feature in terms of the freedom of the 5, is where we want those freedoms, where we have them, where we want to create them, and where we're struggling with them. And I think oftentimes when we experience the 5 as a cycle of time, we feel kind of edgy. Right? Just because we feel like we're being tethered. We feel like we want to keep moving, and something's holding us back, got us on a leash. And that is really what I'm finding everyone's feeling right now.
I mean, you and I got on the call, and the first thing that we said to each other was like, ooh. Yeah. It's like, oh, I mean, like, let's keep it real here. We're both feeling, oof. And it's okay. I think we're all feeling it. There hasn't been a person that you've spoken to that, you're feeling it from your clients and your friends. And I'm podcast people are telling me the same exact thing. So I think it doesn't matter the walk of life that you're on. We are feeling this energy. And this is what you're talking about, the universal collective energy that we're all feeling.
Yes, absolutely. And so with that though, so we're moving out of that, and now what, right?
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. We got that 6.
So we got the 6 coming up, and the 6, numerologically speaking, is a time that I would say the key words or the themes that we're coming up with, again, 2022, 2 + 0 + 2 + 2. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the 2s, because think about that.
It's a lot. It's a lot of 2s.
We've got some repeating 2s here. And yet to go back to the 6 to start out with, that's the foundational energy that we will all be feeling globally. The 6 is about home. It's about relationships. It's about service, responsibility, family. It's the 6 in numerology. I call it the kind of that nurturing, visionary energy. It's all about vision too. It's all about seeing the bigger picture. It's about justice. It's really wanting home, right? Wanting to establish and feel at home, no matter where you are. That nesty, nurturing, responsible energy, right? Yeah. It's like, even if you look at the number 6, I always say it looks like a little pregnant belly.
Oh, right?
Yeah. It's like that cosmic parent energy. And so you're like, well, what does that mean in terms of a universal year? How does that show up? Well, it shows up where politically and just collectively, we want to know what home is, where it is, what's happening. And even if we think about it, climate change, people are being displaced from their homes. People have, during the pandemic time in the last 2 years, people have had to move back with parents, exodus from the city. People over in other countries are refugees coming out. I mean, going because of political tensions and other things going on. So home is a big deal right now. Where is home? And then on a grander scale, home is planet Earth, right?
Mm.
and is Mother Earth, and she's kind of weeping right now, right?
Yeah. Yes. I think that
So,
there's so much going on from, like you said, environmental problems
mhm,
to
mhm.
even just how we are treating each other is,
Oh my gosh.
it's a lot.
Isn't it funny? I was just saying to someone yesterday, I met a friend for tea in the morning, and the person who sat us on the little outside terrace thing she said, yeah, we're really understaffed, and people, because I asked her how she was, and she said, yeah, you're here at a good time because it's not real busy, because when it gets busy, people get really bad.
Oh,
People
just
get
like
really
cranky, impatient, like,
rude.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
really demanding, really rude. And I said, well, you need to wear, a big sign on on your apron that says, please have patience. We're doing our best. We're understaffed. And she's like, oh, we have signs everywhere in our restaurant that say we're understaffed. Please, but people don't care. And I'm finding that people are less tolerant.
Mm.
They're less patient. I don't know if you've experienced this on the road. I don't mean to be negative. I've also
I think it's
noticed that there are
realist.
some
Yeah.
other things that people are nicer and kinder and all of that. But a lot of times I'm seeing people really not making eye contact. Their heads are in their phones. They've got, all of it. And so this is going to be really a thematic that we are working with. How do we connect?
Mm. And how do we connect, especially after having 2020, which was almost a year of like disconnecting,
Yeah,
like
yeah, I would just say it's not almost.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like pull the plug, like we're out, type of energy.
Mhm.
And I remember, oh man, this must have been our 2020 conversation. I believe you used an analogy about a house and how, 2020, we think we're going to be building this new house and there's delays. And then we think in the 5 year, we're going to be in our house, but
Right.
we've just now got the
Or
foundation
we're going to
down.
be
Yeah.
on an airplane traveling. The
Yeah.
5 is more about travel, more about exploration, more about adventure. The year before that, in 2020, was about foundations, was the
Yeah.
number 4. And again, when the foundations, it's like when you strengthen the foundation and build on it, or is it structurally unsound and you have to bulldoze, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are
Yeah.
just like all going together. What are the oppositional qualities of the 6 year and 6 in general?
Good question and good point. So here's the way I see it. I see it that this is the opposing qualities for the 6 is that the 6 it has this idealistic way about it. So when you're dealing with the 6, and when you're dealing with it as a cycle of time, as an energy within this cycle, and I think we're seeing it already, but I think it's going to really start escalating even more. I'm right and you're wrong.
Ooh.
You need to do what I say, and because I'm perfect, and look at and how it could be. And if you just did, everyone needs to do what I tell them to do
Ooh.
because of how I believe and how I think.
Well, this sounds fun.
I know. Sorry. So it's that controlling perfectionism, but it's also kind of that judgment, that crushing judgment. And I don't know anyone who I've spoken to either who hasn't noticed, let's put it this way, that all that we've been dealing with COVID, with vaccinations, with everything else, no matter what side of anything you're on, it is an issue that is unprecedented in
Yes.
terms of interpersonal relationships.
Yes. And I think that, as someone who works from home, is very much a introverted person. I gain my energy from being alone. And while I am very gregarious and outgoing on the podcast and with people, I don't I'm not out in public all the time, right? Like I'm not
Yeah.
traveling all the time. So sometimes, and this is very much personal to me, I wasn't very aware as to how black and white some people's perception of everything was. Like it has
Mhm.
to be this way. It cannot be that way. Like it's almost like there's no gray area
Mm.
anymore. It's like pick a side. That's it.
Yeah, and it's wrong,
Right.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's not even
Mhm.
like you have that choice and okay, that's your belief. It's right or wrong. Like
Yeah.
pick one.
Yeah.
And then that differs from each person that you meet of their view, their perception, their belief. And I think that this is part of the heaviness that we're feeling is especially if maybe you can see both sides, right? Like if you're Switzerland right now and
Yes.
you can see both sides and
Right.
you're like, you have a very valid point and you have a very valid point, and you're kind of that middleman.
Mhm.
It's very hard to be the middleman right now.
Well, it is. And it is just that very interesting thing. I know relationships that have terminated, family
Mm,
member, you know, family relationships, everything else about, you know, I'm vaccinated, not vaccinated, you're vaccinated, not vaccinated, we're not, you know, seeing, and you're an idiot and you're wrong and you're this and you're that, and I cannot deal with you anymore.
yeah.
And it's that really interesting engagement of, you know, I just don't, haven't lived through a period of time where, I mean, just a silly example, and I know people can pick apart any example you're ever going to use on anything.
Yeah.
But, you know, with the flu shot, let's just do one level down. I've never been asked judgmentally if I've had the flu shot
Yeah.
by
Right.
friends or family, whatever. You do it or you don't.
Yeah.
It's your personal preference or not. And you do what, I mean, you know, are you, or anything else with your healthcare maintenance? Are you
Right.
on, oh, are you on thyroid medication? Are you on
Yeah.
antidepressants?
Right.
Have you done, I mean, it's no one's business.
And then now
And
it's
now it's everyone,
everyone's business.
apparently.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, or we're attempting to make it so, right?
Yes. Right.
And yeah, and I think about that as well with, you know, just to expand, and then we can drag it right back in. But I think about, you know, even in the United States, we've had cultures all my life, and for a long time now, I guess I'll put it that way. I mean, Mennonites, you have other people, Quakers, other people who don't believe in vaccinations. They don't believe in certain kinds of medicines, medical procedures, and whatever else, and they're not breaking the law.
Right.
You know, it's a
Yeah.
choice. I've known people who have been diagnosed with cancer who have refused treatment.
Yeah.
You know, traditional treatment in
Yeah.
terms of, you know, and they're not being arrested or, you know, not allowed to go into a restaurant or, you know, whatever else. And everyone can say, oh, but it's a pandemic and you can give it to somebody. I mean, again, we can get into the thin slicing. I'm not trying to put any weight on anything. What I am saying, though, it's a really interesting way. And I think that to circle back to this number 6, universal year, numerologically, that we will be in, it's going to be begging these questions. And what I want to say, and I'll frame it this way, it may not be a successful framing, but we'll see. I mean, I have a PhD and I've done a lot of research in my life. And one of the things that I knew very early on in the realm of academic research is that the question you ask and the way you ask the question presupposes the answer.
Mm, that's true. Yes, because it
Right?
really depends on the way that you're asking the question, because you and I could ask the same exact question different ways, and that would prompt a different response depending.
Exactly. And even on the, you know, the silly, not silly, it's like, I don't know if you've ever heard that saying, you know, when did you stop beating your wife?
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no answer there, you know,
Right.
that is going to be in your positive benefit. So again, it's a matter of what question is asked, how it's asked, under what. And so we're really sliding into this, I think, again, globally. How are we asking these questions? What presuppositions are we looking at? What angle are we using data? Where does the data come from? What is data? What is knowledge? What is information? I know I'm getting really kind of, you know, waxing philosophical here, but I think that these are huge questions that are coming into play that everyone's asking.
And and I think that they're important to bring up too, because this falls in line with the energetic theme. And I think when we're more aware of it, sometimes that helps us take the emotion out of it. And
Yes.
I know sometimes when I'm just having a day, that it really does allow me to just take that step back and not make it so personal all the time. Yeah. And you can just say, okay, this is what's happening. This is the fact of it. Right. And when you're able to take your emotion out of it, whew,
Yeah.
that's a game changer in itself.
It really is. It really is. And how to do that. So the 6th year, I think, is going to feel, it's going to feel like people are wanting to feel at home, wanting to feel secure, right? Because we all feel so destabilized right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all feel so uncertain.
Yes. And I think for me, I don't know about you, but I've been a little hesitant to make certain moves. Like
Oh
almost like
yeah.
I can't see into the future
Like,
right now.
don't
Like
even make a plan, right?
right,
It's like,
right.
what,
Like that. Like
what am I doing this afternoon?
when we were preparing to do like the energy forecast, like I was like, well, I don't even want to open my calendar too late out, because I was like, I don't know where I'm gonna be. I don't know what's gonna be happening. And I know in our last energy update, the mid-year 2021, I was in the midst, like I'm in my personal 6th year, and we had discussed that my 5-year was no fun because quarantine, right? So like I had to redefine freedom, and this year it was my home. My home was impacted. Our whole lives got flipped upside down, and it looked like we were going to be homeless for a matter of like 6 weeks, like had no clue where we were going to be. And then boom, we moved from Florida to Virginia out of a whim. Could have never planned this, if I tried. And now my whole focus is, I mean, for the past couple of months was making this house a home, right? Like making it a home for my children and reestablishing my roots. But not only that, I am now physically closer to my hometown, to my family. So people that I hadn't seen in a while. And then also realizing that I needed to have different boundaries being closer to home. Like the person who I was when I lived here 10 years ago is not the same person I am now. And I operate differently. So I've realized how, well, yes, it was my physical home. There was those like a subtitle to everything within it, little layers that like keep being pulled back. But before we move on to the personal years, you had mentioned 2022, we have that 222. So how does this kind of build within the universal year as well?
Well, and I want to just lap back 2 seconds, because I love what you just said about your 6th personal year, because those listening can think about that in terms of the universal year, that they'll be feeling bits and pieces of that. And I think that really, if we want to take anything from that, it is about understanding boundaries. Healthy emotional boundaries, and really, educating ourselves, because we don't learn these things in school. And we rarely learn them from our parents. It's just, we just don't. And so to read a little Brene Brown, to go in and look at the Gottman Institute, and to think about, how our relationship dynamics are, and how we can work with that in a better way, right? To even, because we're not trained. We're just expected to kind of come out and know how to do this, and we don't. So the 6 is about, again, family. It's about, again, the overarching theme for the 6 is really learning and leaning into and aligning with that whole idea of acceptance. Accepting yourself, accepting what is, right?
That's big.
It is really big, And so anyway, I really appreciated you saying that, because that's a really key element. If anyone wants just a little homework for next year, it's just, just do a little homework on your personal boundaries, and on really understanding how to give and how to be responsible. But when you lean over into the martyrdom, right? Into the exasperation, you're overgiving, and you got to put in, and we train people how to treat us, right?
Yes. And it's okay to unlearn a lot of what you have been told your entire life. I know that's been, I think we have to. I think we're being called upon to do so. Yeah.
We're very, and that really, that bridges us into talking very briefly about these 2s, because I look as a numerologist at repeating numbers, at patterns, right? That's what we're always looking at, the code, and what it's telling us, what information it's bringing. And so 2022, not only do we have a string of 2s, it's interrupted or sandwiched between a 0 And in numerology, the 0, we don't talk about it very much in numerology. And yet I find it's a fascinating number that, is worthy of a whole conversation. And yet the 0, when it shows up, is an amplifier. It's an intensifier. Okay, so it's almost like, this ring of infinity and of intensification. And so whatever it comes in contact with, it doubles, triples it up, right? It's kind of, like boom, it brings it, it really emphasizes that. So when we've got all these 2s, which give us triple amount of 2, and then bang that 0 in there, we got a lot of 2 that's making up this 6. Luckily, they get each other. The 2 and the 6 are very similar, because the 2 is about love, partnership, relationships. It's highly intuitive. It's diplomatic and peacekeeping. It wants the best for the group. It wants win-win. It wants everyone to be happy and everything to go smoothly, and it will do everything to make that happen. The point of the oppositional point is that it's too sensitive and it loses its identity and gives, then is really resentful. Ooh. And how that shows up universally is that I think this is going to be a year where everyone is going to be super duper sensitive.
Ooh.
And if we're just looking at the last 2 years, oh my gosh.
How much more sensitive can we get, Felicia?
How much more? How much more?
Well, then let's talk about this, because I think these come up throughout the year and maybe we overlook them, but we also have days such as June 6th, which is the 6th month and the 6th day. So that in the 6th year, so that'll be a 666 day. And of course, in many religions, 666 is viewed as a negative or satanic number. And while that's not my personal belief, I'm curious to know the significance of these days or what they mean in numerology.
Well, the days themselves, we can then slice that, but let's look at just your example there, because 666, it's so interesting to me. Sign of the devil, right? Actually, numerologically, it couldn't be any less true. Yeah. The 6, when it shows up triple, is saying you need to stop and be such a perfectionist. You need to stop telling everyone what to do, and you need to show unconditional love. For yourself and for others, right? Yeah. There's much more that goes with that, but that's just a soundbite in terms of what that means. And it's always really interesting to me, even, that socially and culturally, we could go on and on about the history of how things get lodged in terms of religion and everything else. Something that was actually like the number 13, unlucky number 13. That's not true either. Right.
It's actually very lucky.
Is a very well. It has a kind of divine feminine.
Yes, yeah. Friday 13th
aspect to it, and so it was taken from that point of power and attempted to be controlled, right? In that way. So anyway, it's really interesting not to take things at face value, right? And to do a little bit of exploration there. But when we have those. In terms of dates, I find like 11/11 definitely as a date, those sorts of 9/9, whatever it is, those to me are power portals of energy that you can utilize during that day. It's almost to me like the new moon, the full moon, something of that nature, where you might sit down and light a candle and do a little meditation. And it helps also to write down intentions. And yet, if you know more and more about, let's say wasn't this last new moon in Libra? If I'm remembering correctly. So rather than and new moons are times to set intentions. Yeah. I intend to do this. I want this to easily find myself, and writing down intentions. And yet then if you could focus it on the thematics that Libra brings, the chances of that energy carrying it through are much more likely to happen. So rather than, I want my business to whatever, which it can be part of business, but my point being, I want, it's Libra's more about relationships,
right?
And more about balance.
Focus more on that theme.
Yeah, focus on relationships during that one. Full moons are more about gratitude.
Yeah.
Because it's all this energy pouring in. So it's more about having gratitude. And then depending on wasn't it Aries? I think it was Aries this last time.
Ooh.
So yeah,
it was
whoosh.
a big one.
That was a big one.
Felt that one.
Yeah, I think most people did. And yet the Aries is, again, drive and new ambition and all those things. So then you can focus on that. And so I think energetically it propels and allows things to manifest more so. And yet overarchingly, even if we just say, for even the most skeptical people, all right, even if it's a placebo, isn't it helpful to focus on something?
Oh, yeah. Right. To just take your mind off of whatever that is that day and give yourself a prompt almost to just lean into.
And if nothing else, it allows you to, for a moment, ponder where you are on that subject.
Yeah.
Personally.
Well, reflection. And also maybe that's a time that you get clear on your beliefs about this topic.
Exactly.
I love that. I love that, looking at it as like a power portal, because that to me also feels, it gives you a mission of what you can do that day. Because I think a lot of times we hear portal being thrown around, right? Or like the 888, and people are like, well, what do you do? Like how, and I think we have that ability to overcomplicate it when really we can just simplify it, and it doesn't have to be so humanized, right?
And we have to kind of lighten up, right?
Yeah.
And yet have a light intention around it, have a light knowledge, and to just, it's just, to me, it's, let's move with the energy rather than against it.
Yes.
Right. It's like, why try to be one of those? Have you ever watched video of salmon going upstream to spawn?
Yeah.
And no wonder they die at the end.
Right. My gosh, you're exhausted.
Exhausted. It is horrifying to watch that. I'm like, oh my gosh, couldn't
have found a better place.
I'm exhausted for you. So we do that to ourselves. We just try to swim, resist it and swim against it. It's like, wow, wouldn't it be nice to just kind of turn that around and go with the flow, and think that there could be maybe some ease there.
Force versus flow. Even in nature.
Exactly.
Well, at the stroke of midnight on January 1st, we're not only in a new universal year, we each begin a new personal year. Will you walk us through what the personal years are and the energetic theme for each?
Absolutely. So, and we'll do very briefly on this. These are, there's so much wonderful depth and breadth of information, I find. And yet we'll give you kind of just the little brush stroke here. And yet, if you're listening and don't know what your personal year is in numerology, the way that we calculate this is by using your month and your day of birth. The year of birth is not relevant for this calculation. So put that to the side. And should we use yours?
Yeah, we can use mine, January 9th.
So January 9th, you're making it easy because January is a number 1 in numerology. It is the first month, so it's a 1. The day 9 is a 9. Okay, so let's just, for those listening though, it's like, oh, so let's say you're born on December 25th, let's say. And if you are, I'm sorry.
My grandma was born on that day. And it's such a duality. Say happy birthday, Merry Christmas.
I know. I don't know why. And I don't mean that in any other way. That has just got to be a little strange. So anyway, so if you're born on 12/25, I don't know why I'm using that as an example. 12 is December. So that's in numerology, we will do a basic addition problem here. So 1 + 2, which is the 12, equals 3. So we're always reducing to a 1-digit number. The 25th, 2 + 5 equals 7. So then we add that together, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you get a 10. Now it gets a little tricky because you're like, well, I got a 10. Okay, now you have to keep adding. So we always want that 1 digit. 1 + 0 equals 1. So that is a 1. Now, in order to discern what your personal year number is, you add the number of the current year. So if we were looking to next year, Okay. So for you next year, it's going to be, we've talked about that, 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 2, that's a 6. So then we take the 1 plus 9 plus 6 in your example. So that's 1 plus 9 is 10. 10 plus 6 equals 16. And 1 plus 6 equals 7. So you will be experiencing a 7 personal year next year.
Which you had guessed that when I told you what I was thinking of doing before you even did this. So we'll get to the 7, or do you want to start with the 7?
Why don't we start and then we can go back? We
Let's do that.
We can go back and do the whole thing, but I think it's just so funny. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Because I had told you that the podcast, I've been considering a few things, and you were like, oh, are we going into your 7 year? So what energetically screams Lauren's going into a 7 year when I say that statement?
Yes. So Lauren said, she said, well, we're doing the podcast, Felicia, today that we're doing because of feedback from listeners that said, yeah, last year it came in January, but we kind of want to have a heads up, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so could you do it before that? So that's why we're doing it now instead of at the very first of the year. So that's what you said. And then you said, well, and I wanted to also do it this way because I've made a decision that I'm going to take a brief hiatus. I'm going to take a break from doing my recordings for maybe 4 to 8 weeks. And I said, oh, well, what personal year are you in? You must be in a 7. And you said, oh my God, I am. So the 7 personal year is a time of introspection. It's a time of diving inward. It's a time where we kind of retract. Where we're not really all that ambitious about monetary career-oriented things. If we are, it usually blows back to bite us.
Oh, interesting.
So it's really a time of deep kind of soul searching. Yeah. It's a time for knowledge gathering. It's a time for resting. Right? It's a time for, again, going inward, organization, learning. I will guarantee you that you will go on some strange little pathways, Lauren.
I already feel myself prepping for those pathways because as I told you, we were talking about brain rewiring, and I was like, I'm feeling called to it because I had 3 guests in a row when I talk about brain rewiring, and I was like, okay, universe, I'm listening, right? Because like that never happens. It never happens in that way. And as I was talking to the guest earlier today, Bob Doyle, it was resonating with me. And I was like, I think I need to learn more about this, but I can't do it right now. Right. Like, it's like, I have too much on my plate. So it's like, I need to plan for it. And when do I plan for it? At the beginning of the year.
Yes, exactly. And so that is the beauty to me of knowing the personal years. I love it so much because it's almost just gives you a sense of validation and a sense of relief, because most of us, especially especially here in the United States, we are so overdriven. And it's all about accomplishment, production, results, work. And if we aren't doing that, we feel like something is wrong with us.
Yeah. Like we're just taking up space at this point. Yeah.
Well, or that, or we have to really worry about that or something of that nature. And so numerologically speaking, we need to have these, the flow. We need to have the seasons of what we do. Yeah. I mean, you can't have summertime all the time, even in places when it's summer most of the time, even in California, even in Florida, you still have time where things have to germinate, things have to rest, things have to, all of that. So the 7 year is a pausing time.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I think especially coming off the 5 and the 6, it's just felt like a lot. And I have felt that need to kind of pull back. And I've noticed, and you and I are speaking right now in October. So while everyone else be hearing this in December, I've already noticed, like I shut down my LinkedIn account, right? Like I was like, I don't use it. Why is it open? People are just sending me messages. I shut it down, but I'm feeling like, okay, I really need to be mindful of my energy, not only of like, where people can find me at, but what I'm putting out and what I'm nurturing within myself.
Exactly. It can be a real cosmic ass kicker
Yeah.
in a good way, but in a way that can be, I find it is a time where when we quiet down enough, those shadows are going to come up.
Yeah. A lot of inner work and
A lot of inner work that you really cannot explain to another living soul. And when you try it, people look at you like, what?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, you don't understand. This is amazing, and they're like,
Right.
oh, okay,
Okay.
whatever, you crazy lady.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it really expect for things to just be very deep, just deep. And of course, the opposition there is to no, I'm going to run as fast as I can, and I'm going to. And then there's some health problems that usually will come in. There's just some other things that happen. So listen. So don't do that.
Yeah.
Listen.
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 And this is where it helps being aware of the energy and flowing with the energy. So let's just roll on. So I was a 7. What about those who are entering a personal year 8?
Okay. Well, let's see. Let's go. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So if you were in a 7 this year, that's pretty much what you could have expected, amongst other things. But then you're moving it to an 8. The 8 is just the opposite. So the eight is the start, the beginning of what I call a 3-year push time or 3-year transition cycle. The 8 numerologically as a personal year is a time of as you have sown, so shall you reap. I'm not quoting that very well. It's about money. It's where your focus is on finances, on your material welfare in whatever way, shape, or form, because in the 7 year, that takes a very back seat.
Interesting.
Right? So in the 8, it's more focused on money, on manifesting that kind of abundance, of really reaping the rewards of what you've put into play for the past 7 years. So, it's a time of respect, of authority, of things, coming to fruition for you. And it's also a demand. It's a number and a year of endurance. It will test you to step up or get stepped on.
Ooh.
Right? In whatever ways you need to. And it can be kind of financial up, down, and all around as well. So it's a pretty intense time.
Yeah.
One way or the other, right? And then after the 8, we go into the 9. The 9 is the last year of a 9-year cycle. So the 9 is a number of completions, of letting go, kind of surrender. It is the last year. So this is a transitional, transformational year. I've come to really look at the 9 because people are like, oh no, I'm worried, I'm scared, everything has to change. It's a scary time for people because they're like, things are ending. Yeah. No one likes endings, right? I mean, overall, everyone gets scared. So no, if you look at it in terms of, it's like commencement.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
It's endings that are simultaneous beginnings that are opening space for the new. So it's emotional. It can be bittersweet. It's like that last year of college where you're finishing out your coursework, everything else, but everyone's prepping to graduate. Yeah. Some people are going to get married. Some people are going off for their jobs. Some do this, but it won't be the same.
Right.
And yet it's been a very integral, obviously a beautiful part of life, but now it's on to the next thing.
Which brings us to the 1. Back at 1.
Back at 1. And so the 1 is that last year of that 3-year transition cycle. It's also nice to know that it takes this long, right? It's not like you're behind, right? And you literally can't get to that, bridge until you get there. So you have to go through the paces to get there. But the 1, all about new starts, new beginnings. With the 1, whenever it shows up, it is all about initiation, independence, individuation. It really is a time where you are writing, the first chapter of your new book. Wow. So to speak. Sometimes literally,
sometimes
people,
figuratively.
and yet figuratively. So it is, new things are going to come into play, and you're really being asked to be very mindful of what you put into play, because it'll stick with you for the next, 9 years, basically. The 2 after that is a little bit of downtime. It's supposed to be. The universe is like, okay, let's have a little bit of a respite year. This is right. The 2 is all about, it's more about loving partnerships, relationships. It's a year of delays. It can be frustrating because things are just not happening, but it's great for opening yourself up emotionally, getting to know yourself in a better way, in a different way, because you've just been through this 3-year transition cycle. You're a new person.
Yeah.
In many ways, right? So you need to really understand that. It's a great time to galvanize relationships. If you're in a partnership, to up the ante there. If you're looking for the one, it's often where someone comes in for you on that. For business, it's a great time for networking, for really finding your tribe, right? But it's mostly about others, less so than yourself. It's more about putting yourself out there that way. And again, delays and frustrations in that way. So it's all about right timing. So really understand that any delays, you're like, oh, okay, well, how do we make the most out of this? Because it's not time.
Yeah.
It literally is like, like a chicken and an egg, and you're not going to crack open the egg before the little chickie's ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
It won't live.
Exactly. You gotta
Right?
wait and put your patient pants on, as I tell my kids.
Exactly. So, but we have to kind of look at it that way sometimes. Like, it is not ready. It is premature to do that now. So anyway, then we move into a 3. The 3 is all about self-improvement. It's all about creative self-expression, creativity. It's fun. It's social. It will pull up any emotional trauma and triggers that you've got and hand it to you on a platter in a good way, so that you can work on it. But it's also just if you are a creator, this is a great time for auditioning, for writing your book, for getting that album done, for whatever it is. It's creation time.
Yeah.
And if you're not into that, it's into offering I always say that the mantra for the 3 is, when you're laughing, you're learning.
No.
So it's a really good time to learn things, to just infuse enjoyment, optimism, that sort of thing into whatever you do. But it's a self-improvement time to really, up your skill level and have fun and create during that year. Then whatever you're creating that year is going to move into the 4, which is implementation. The 4 is more serious. It's more like, oh, holy crap, I got to get serious. What the heck am I doing in my life?
Yes.
Right. And literally though, if you are a creator, you may have done your book, started your website, that's a time to systematize, implement, do the step by step, maybe not so fun parts that are going to need to be structured in order to have success. Right. So it's about limitations. There's going to be some limiting situations that come in, but it's just that dogged endurance that it takes. So many incredible, great rewards that can come, but it can feel exhausting. So really during that year, you've got to put yourself on your calendar in terms of relaxation, rejuvenation, self-care, because your punch list, you're always like, oh, I've got all this stuff on my punch list and I'll do it tomorrow after everything's done on my punch list. But your punch list is never done. It's always just growing.
It's never ending.
Right. So you got to really remember to do that. You go from that structures, foundation, systematizing, a little bit thankless. And if you've done that all, then you go into the 5, and the 5 is freedom. You can now let some of those things that you've gotten into place take their form, right? Yeah. And have more freedom in your life. It's a changing year. It's a catalytic year. It's a sexy year. Sometimes it's like you've been wearing pheromones and everybody
it's like, ooh,
oh, ooh la la, who are you? And you're like, ooh, I don't know. Let's go find out.
Dive in.
Let's dive in. So it's very sensual, it's sexual, it's in its finest. It's travel, it's adventure, it's exploration, it's meeting new people, it's kind of a bright and shiny object year. And then mid-year, especially September is that peak time, it starts hashing out where it's almost like those meteors of opportunity that are just meant to go by you and just catch your attention for a minute, they go by you, and you suddenly are like, oh yeah, no, that wasn't, no, okay, this.
Yeah.
Right. So it's going to be a changing catalytic year, but don't put a ring on it, during, if you know what I mean, metaphorically and maybe even literally.
Maybe even literally.
Yeah. And then you move from that kind of frenetic, super sexy energy into the 6. The 6 is more about, again, a little bit more of the, white picket fence rather than the, kayak and the jetliner or whatever. It's more about home, family, nesting, responsibility, taking those responsibilities. Again, it's kind of a marriage and divorce year. It's where you're really looking at your relationship life, and mostly a relationship with you. Who am I? What do I really want now? Sounds a little corny to say it that way, but it really is true.
No.
And so you evaluate that, and it's kind of the, should I stay or should I go, or should it stay or should it go? Ooh, sometimes it's a time where things get hashed out that just aren't useful anymore, and again, responsibility during that year can be fabulous for business, really, really dynamic for business and that sort of thing, especially for service oriented businesses or careers or whatever that might be. And then you move right back into that 7, which is where we started, which that contemplation, going from responsibilities to everyone else to kind of navel gazing.
Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting because I'm sure you've done this. Have you mapped out, like, even in a 9-year cycle, just like gone back and been like, year 1?
Oh, yes, I have. When I first discovered numerology.
And was it just like mind blowing?
I was like, holy crap, every punctuation mark in your life is like that kind of the 9 to 1. Yeah. Oh, that's when I got a divorce. Oh, that's when my mom died. Oh, that's when I had my first child. Oh, that's when, right?
Yeah.
So it's this beautiful way of looking at, we all have free will and everything else. And yet it's lovely to look that there is some method to some madness here, right?
Yeah.
So maybe we can relax a little bit.
Well, it was interesting because as you were talking about the 3-year, in my head, you were talking about creativity. And I was like, well, that's actually the year I wrote a book and launched the podcast. And then in year 4, and I did the podcast at the end of year 3. And then by year 4, I was like, I really got to figure this out. Like, because I just did it in a whim. I was like, jump and you'll figure the rest out. And then year 4 was like, figure the rest out. Like, then it was really getting those systems in place. So as you're talking, I was like, wow, I should probably go back through and just see how.
Yeah, it's really fun to do that. Yeah, it really is fun to do that. And it can kind of bring you just back down a little bit of memory lane and to put things into perspective, and to also pat yourself on the back and go, oh, dang,
we did this. Okay. Yeah, we did this. And I think having those moments of patting yourself in the back, especially when we're in an energetic time like this, where it feels thick and heavy, to just have that gratification of like, hey, I'm still here. I'm still doing it. I've done these amazing things and I can keep going no matter how hard it may feel.
Yes.
It's always so great.
Which is always really great. And also, I think we just make a lot of demands on ourselves and others. Sometimes we can, just kind of, I don't know, take a chill pill, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that the universe is telling us right now. It's like, we need to kind of slow it down a little bit, maybe.
Yeah.
Just a bit.
Yeah. I think that with so much innovation and newness, it's also like, okay, let's go back a little bit. What were some of the things that we've neglected that worked really well in the past that we can bring forward? And also, what are some new ways that we can break out of the old norms and create and do better? I'm feeling like there's like this like duality of energy of both, right?
I think so too.
Yeah.
Well, necessity is the mother of invention after all. And so I think that, again, with climate crisis and all of the things that, however we want to put that, climate change, there's just opportunity for making some really big leaps in terms of technologies, the ways that we do things and don't do things, all of it, the way that we, from everything, food, fuel, all of it,
Yeah.
all of it.
And I'm seeing more and more people lean into having their own gardens and
Yeah.
like so like these things like what that to me is very old foundational, right? Like there was a point in time where everyone had their own garden. If you didn't have a garden, then you were bartering a different service for someone who did have a garden. And I can feel that coming back. And I think that's also part of personal responsibility, right? Like you can't always rely on everyone else or everything else. So it is, how do I take this power back home? And like you said, the year of the 6, maybe this is the time that we're building up our homesteads, right? Or figuring out how
our
we can be
sense of community.
Yes.
Right?
And how we can fulfill ourselves without always having to depend on someone else.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. This sounds so corny. I'm going to sound so corny right now, but maybe not. I was taking a walk the other day, and I live in a city right now, and I'm a little anyway, we won't go into that. But I'm walking along, and I'm looking at the litter on the ground, and I'm thinking, how can that be? I mean, how have we understood our role as human beings as that we just throw crap on the ground?
Yeah. And that it's okay.
I mean, well, it's not only okay, it's just that's what it is. I mean, it fascinates me to think that I mean, I'm even I'm thinking right now of what I've read about schools in Japan, certain parts of Japan, where they don't have janitors and they don't have overarchingly they've got a few people who do the cafeteria cooking and everything, but the children help. Yeah, because it's like they're learning skills, but they're also learning about how to be a responsible party in a community of people. Yes. That if you make a mess, you're going to clean it up. And in our culture, you make a mess, someone else will, who cares? Yeah.
It's part of radical responsibility. I
think. And it's just, because some people might roll their eyes. Well, that's just, it's like, but really? Yeah. Wouldn't that be amazing if we just really looked at the world as our home rather than as our, the little hotel that we're paying to occupy overnight.
Exactly. Right? I think it's so multi-layered that this is a great time for that reflection piece and to see like, how are we showing up in our home, in our Mother Earth? Would you treat your mom that way? Exactly. I started saying I'm speaking to a mother right now. And you're like, my kids better not treat me that way. Would you kiss your mother with that mouth? It's like one of those. Like,
No, it's so true though. And those will be thematics in this 6 universal year that'll be coming up. And again, with a lot of that 2 energy. So it's going to be sensitive. It's going to be very community, relationship, emotion driven. And so it's going to be interesting to see what transpires, how it all unfolds.
It will. And it will be great to do an update too, as we're in the thick of it, to see how it's unfolding. But I know after this conversation, many people will be diving deeper into the world of numerology, and they're going to need your guidance on this journey. So will you tell our audience where they can go to connect with you further?
Absolutely. Anyone numerology curious, just go to my website. It is Felicia Bender, Felicia Bender. So FeliciaBender.com. I've got monthly forecasts there for free, a lot of articles. You can get charts, of course, private sessions. I do courses, anything and everything numerology. So you can start slow.
Yes, you'll go down the rabbit hole very quickly on your website.
It's a little weird, isn't it? It's like, oh my gosh, I have so many people who get in touch with me. They're like, oh no, I am down the rabbit hole. Now what do I do?
Yes. So. Well, I feel like you start with one number. It's like you start with your life path, right? And I think it's very similar to astrology. It's like, your sun sign, and then like you go a little bit deeper. And a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. But when it resonates, you can't stop. It's like, and I think that numerology, along with astrology and the other tools that we use, really help give us permission to be ourselves.
Yes.
And this is what I was first attracted to numerology and actually to your website. And it really, in that moment of time, just gave me that, aha, I am who I am, and that's okay. Like,
Oh,
this
it's
is
not
part of
only
who I am.
okay, it's imperative. And
Yeah.
that it's imperative that you realize that the sooner we can realize that it's not only okay, that it's what we really signed off on, right? And part of it is that because it's what we're here to do, it will be, we'll have some distinct challenges there. So we're always going to be in environments that are trying to convince us otherwise.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
No, you're really not that. That's not how you feel, all those things. So it's really wonderful to be able to see it in front of you and go, oh, yes, how can this know this just from my birthday, just from my name?
Yeah.
And I think there's some just cosmic beauty to that. I love it.
And if anyone else if you're a parent, I've done it for my children, and I feel like I also understand them. And you think like, oh, you're a parent, you should get your children. We're all individuals. I don't know what's going on inside their brains 24/7 as 11 and 7-year-olds. I don't know.
Thank God.
I can think, right? Like I may think I know, but I don't really understand. So I've even used numerology to understand my kids better. And that's been a game changer for me. So I think numerology is so multifaceted, and I love our conversations because you really help us navigate the world of numerology.
Well, thank you. And I love talking with you. So let's meet up again and do a sanity check,
we will
as we get into 2022. All right.
All right. We'll catch up, Felicia.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so you may have caught that bit that Felicia shared about me taking a break from the podcast production. Don't worry. We're going to talk more about that on this week's Fuel Your Life Friday episode, but for now, I just want you to focus on the conversation that Felicia and I had, because there's a lot to unpack. I encourage you to re-listen if you need to as well, but also don't forget to calculate your personal year number. Felicia has so many great tools and resources on her website. I've linked her website and her social channels on this week's episode notes, found on mindbizlife.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with a friend, and be sure to give the podcast a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever it is that you tune in, and turn it up. I'm back here on Friday for another episode of Fuel Your Life Friday. But until then, remember, every level of life is an opportunity to grow. Be well, my friend.